Hello everyone, Hyper here, and welcome to the Windwalker Monk preview. This spec was probably the most fun melee spec that I played in Legion, so I was really excited to try this out on the BFA beta. We actually saw quite a few changes to this spec early on in the alpha, and then over time, as we transitioned into the beta and later patches, they actually kind of reverted those changes and seemed to went back to how Monk works on live. And that's not a bad thing. I think they found a winning formula with the Monk and they kind of stuck to it. So they made some significant improvements and some nerfs, I would say, in areas where Monk was absolutely insane, like high AoE damage. Our AoE damage is still really good, don't get me wrong, but now at least we have to press something else that's spinning crane kick. First of all, what was removed from the Windwalker Monk? Not too many things, actually. They removed Healing Elixir, which was kind of a defensive cooldown they use mostly when leveling. They removed Chi Orbit, which was a last row talent, if I remember correctly, but overall not very useful. And they also removed Leg Sweep as a talent and made it baseline, so that's a really nice quality of life change, because now you can have Leg Sweep and Ring of Peace, or you can have an empowered Leg Sweep up. So as far as changes, there's quite a few to our baseline abilities. First of all, Fist of Fury was changed to deal full damage to primary targets and half damage to all other targets. Now, if I understand this correctly, I haven't played too much Monk, but from my experience, Fist of Fury had a kind of a target cap on live, so they removed that, and now on the beta it seems like no matter how many targets you have, you're still going to do half the damage to all of them. Spinning crane kick was heavily nerfed. They changed the spinning crane kick stack on each target from 40% to 10% per stack. So if you're not familiar with that, Windwalker monks used to tag as many different targets as they could, because each unique target that you tag with most of your major abilities applies a dot, and the more of those dots up you have, the more your spinning crane kick will do. So they nerfed that by a very big margin, so again down from 40% to 10%. Gale Burst artifact trait was added to Touch of Death, and what this artifact trait did is it increased your Touch of Death damage based on the damage you do to the target during its duration. So 10% of the total damage you deal to it gets added to the Touch of Death damage. And then just a little name change here, Effuse was changed to Vivify. And then one kind of major change that they added as a mechanic is CDR on our Fist of Fury and on our RSK, our Rising Sun Kick. So whenever you Blackout Kick, you get a 1 second CDR on those two abilities, which is pretty big because Blackout Kick is kind of a filler for us, and especially if you get procs, you get more CDR. And then there was also a little nerf to our utility. Paralysis was changed from 15-second cooldown to 45-second, it still lasts the same duration. And Transcendence Transfer was changed from 25-second cooldown to 45 seconds. So again, just a little nerf to our overall utility. As far as new baseline abilities go, the only thing we got is Mystic Touch, and this was added to every single Monk spec, so it's just added to Monk across the board. And this increases the target's physical damage taken by 5%, and this gets applied by, I'm pretty sure, every ability that does damage to the target. Next, let's talk about the talents, because this is where we see most of the changes. Windwalker Monk has a 1 second locked global cooldown, which is really nice because it means we haven't been affected by the GCD changes as much. We do have all of our cooldowns except for Karma on the GCD right now, but other than that, you know, it's not really that big of an issue from what I've noticed so far. In the first row, we see Chi Burst being buffed. Now for every single enemy target damaged, you get 1 Chi. So this is really nice in Mythic Plus situations because right before a pack, you Chi Burst as you run in, so you're going to start the pool with basically full Chi, which is absolutely insane. Even for single target, you will most likely take Chi Burst because the cast time on it is very low. And depending on the amount of haste you have, this will most likely be under 1 second, which is important because, like I mentioned, that is the global cooldown on a Windwalker Monk. And the other two talents in this row, Eye of the Tiger and Chi Wave, do basically negligible amount of damage. So Chi Wave, its only really strength is that it allows us to keep up hit combo and allow us to chain more blackout kicks together without having to Tiger Palm in between. So that's why Chi Wave was always nice. It was never because of the damage. It was purely because it helped us with our hit combo. Chi Burst now also gives us Chi, and it also counts for a hit combo, but it is on a 30-second cooldown as opposed to Chi Wave's 15. So there, you have a choice, but it also generates Chi. So overall, I think it's a much better talent. Eye of the Tiger is just basically doing no damage at all. It is supposed to heal you as well, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm only looking at kind of damage breakdowns. I'm not too concerned about self-healing at this moment. In Tier 2, we see that Tiger's Lust swapped places with Diffuse Magic in the Tier 5 row, so that was just a straight up switch. And that I think is very nice because this makes it a purely utility-based row. All three of these talents give you a choice between different types of mobility. You want instant burst of movement speed, you want kind of overall more rolls, do you want Chi Torpedo instead of roll? So I don't know, it's an interesting change that they made here. Then in Tier 3, we have Ascension, which was buffed slightly. Now it also increases your maximum energy by 20. Previously, it only increased our Chi and our energy regen. Energizing Elixir was nerfed quite a bit. Previously in Legion, it used to refill all of our energy and all of our Chi. Now it still refills all of our energy, however, it only generates 2 Chi instead of your full Chi bar. And then in the middle, you might be able to notice instantly that we have a new talent. So we used to have Power Strikes in this row, which was moved to the last row, and it was replaced with Fist of the White Tiger, and this is again a builder. So this row is focused around resources, as you might be able to notice. And Fist of the White Tiger costs 40 energies on a 30-second cooldown, and it generates 3 Chi. And this is very important because usually when you come out of your big combo with Fist of Fury, Rising Sun Kick, Whirling Dragon Punch, you're typically either maxed on energy or near maxed on energy. So this gives you an instant way to spend all that energy and convert it into Chi. And you can also use this before going into that combo to instantly generate a lot of Chi that allows you to get that combo off. In Tier 4, Leg Sweep was replaced with Tiger Tail Sweep, and this is essentially an Empower Leg Sweep talent. It increases its radius and reduces its cooldown. Summon Black Ox Statue and Ring of Peace are still the same, but like I mentioned before, now you're able to have Ring of Peace and Leg Sweep at the same time. In the Tier 5 row, Healing Elixir was removed and replaced by Inner Strength. And this is supposed to be a passive DR talent. Each Chi you spend reduces your damage taken by 2%, stacking up to 5 times, and it lasts 5 seconds. So this is kind of interesting, but I feel like it's something that you might have to play around, especially if for players who just tend to spend their Chi as it comes up. For this, you might have to space it out a little bit, and it also takes some time to build up, so you won't have it instantly when you go from maybe trash back to trash back. But overall, I think it's a decent talent if you're just looking for some passive damage mitigation. In the center row, or in the center column, we still have Diffuse Magic, works the same way, and then Dampen Harm. So it's interesting that we have to kind of make this choice. And again, this is a purely damage reduction based talent. And again, you have choices between like passive, steady DR versus magic DR versus physical DR or overall DR. So interesting choices. And I think this is a nice improvement to the talent rows. In Tier 6, we have Hit Combo, which was nerfed from 2% per stack to 1% per stack, and it stacks up to 6 times. So this is a big change to Hit Combo. Overall, it will just make it less punishing to use if you mess up during your Hit Combo. But other than that, not a huge change as long as the other numbers are balanced around it. Rushing Jade Wind is one of those talents that was heavily changed. and it was changed to drain 4 energy per second. So it takes 4 energy to activate it, and then it just drains 4 energy per second, and it deals AoE damage to nearby targets. This is interesting, but overall I don't like this talent because it slows down our rotation a lot. Our Tiger Palm, which is our main builder, costs 50 energy. So you're essentially, you never want to be below 55 at the least whenever you Tiger Palm. Otherwise, if you Tiger Palm exactly at 50 as your energy comes back, which is what most people tend to do, your Rushing Jade Wind will instantly fall off. So it slows down our rotation. It makes you have to think about what buttons you're going to press and how much energy they're going to use, because you might have a situation where this falls off and then you have to reactivate it, which is a wasted global. Overall, I don't like this talent too much. It might see some use in heavy AoE, like very large packs, but I don't really like playing around with this too much. Then we have Swan, which was nerfed quite a bit. Its duration was changed from 45 seconds to 20 seconds. However, its cooldown was reduced from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. So overall, I'm pretty sure this is still a nerf to it as far as uptime goes, but then the damage will just come down to how well they tune it. Then in the tier 7 row, we see Power Strikes, which was changed to now also increase the damage of your next Tiger Palm by 100%. So every 15 seconds, your TP will light up, you will get this proc, and your Tiger Palm will generate 1 extra chi, and it will deal 100% additional damage. Currently, Tiger Palm doesn't do enough damage for this to be noticeable. Maybe if they buff this up to 200% or 250, it would be something I would consider. But as it is right now, it's a little bit underwhelming, and it does seem like they just moved the tier 3 talent to the last tier without really putting any more thought into it. Then we have Whirling Dragon Punch, which is still the same, fun talent to use, especially good in AoE situations. And then we have Serenity, which was slightly buffed. They changed its duration from 8 seconds to 9 seconds. I think that's mostly just to compensate for the global cooldown though. So let's take a look at some common talent builds that you might see on boss fights and in Mythic Plus or in dungeons. So for single target, I assume this will be the standard where you take hit combo, Whirling Dragon Punch. Maybe if they change Serenity somehow to be more effective, or if they buff Power Strikes, they might see some use. But as it stands right now, Whirling Dragon Punch and hit combo are the best. And then Fist of the Tiger is also overall better than Energizing Elixir in my opinion, because most of your damage comes from chi rather than energy. So if you look at your damage breakdown at any point, most of your top damage abilities, which is FOF, Blackout Kick, and RSK, will all be your top damage, and all those consume chi. So it's just nice to have a quick way of converting your energy into chi. And then in the first row, like I said before, you take Chi Burst for that extra chi generation. Our opener does change a little bit, because you want to essentially Tiger Palm and Fist of the White Tiger to instantly be at 5 chi when you start the fight. And then after that, you go into your Touch of Death, Storm, Earth, and Fire and do the rest of your opener. The reason why you don't put Fist of the White Tiger inside your Touch of Death is because it doesn't really do too much damage. This is mostly a resource converter. Don't think of it as a damaging ability. Always think of it as a resource conversion ability. So if you look at the tooltip here, it says that it does 1900 physical damage. So 1.9k, almost basically 2k. Let's just call it even 2k. Then we look at Rising Sun Kick, that is 3.7k. Our Fist of Fury is 4.4k. Our Whirling Dragon is again 3.7k. So you can see that there's quite a big damage difference between those. So it's not exactly a builder, but it doesn't have the damage of a spender. So again, we'll just take a look at this rotation quickly on the target dummy. Roll in, Tiger Palm, Fist, and then we Touch of Death, Storm, Earth, and Fire, RSK, and Fist of Fury. Right after Fist of Fury, we can go ahead and Whirling Dragon Punch, then we have another RSK up, and then we can Chi Burst. So as long as you're not kept on energy and not kept on chi, you're good to Chi Burst. That's one nice thing about classes which have 2 resources. You're able to quickly get off other abilities that maybe are not exactly beneficial, or they are but they kind of take some time. As long as you're not kept on your resources, it's not a waste to cast those abilities. And as you can see on the damage meter, Windwalker Monk has insanely high burst and is probably the burstiest melee classes that I've played so far. And I tested all the other ones and it does seem like it still stands up to that reputation. One nice thing with this new Windwalker Monk is the CD reduction on your RSK and your FOF. It's insanely nice, especially when you're not running hit combo. So for Mythic Plus, where we would take a different talent, you're able to RSK or blackout kick multiple times very quickly. You should still weave in abilities because our mastery is unchanged from Legion, where if our last ability pressed is not the same as our current ability pressed, then it does extra damage based on your mastery. But you're able to get a lot of blackout kicks to reduce the cooldown of your Fist of Fury, so you're able to get the huge AoE burst more often. One thing to note, I am on a 111 character, so I did this testing at 110 and I hit 111 from doing a few dungeons. But overall, the numbers are about the same between the two levels, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. You can check out the VOD on Twitch if you want, and you will be able to see that this is indeed how much damage I was pretty much doing at 110 as well. Now let's take a look at an AoE build, because this is where Windwalker Monk shines. It's Mythic Plus and AoE situations. So the only change we really have to make is going from hit combo to Shwen. And this is assuming you're doing dungeons where the most trash pools are either 3 to 6 targets, and then boss fights that maybe have some adds on them. If you're doing insanely big pools, similar to Eye of Ashara or Lower Karazhan, then RJW does become better, but it also slows down your gameplay quite a lot, and I just don't think it's a very good talent to use. The opener is pretty straightforward. You Chi Burst as you run in, then you Swen. This puts you at 4 Chi instantly, then you Storm Earth and Fire and Fist of Fury, and then you instantly White Tiger to spend that excess amount of energy that you have, then you RSK and Whirling Dragon Punch, and here your goal is pretty much just to get as much cooldown reduction on your Fist of Fury as you can. So you might have been able to notice there that my clones were actually jumping to nearby targets, and I'm not sure what causes this bug. So about 9 out of 10 pulls, they don't do this. I will Storm Earth and Fire here again and see if it happens. So as you can see right now, they're just hitting my main target. And that should only be the case if I focus them, so I retoggle the ability. But most of the time they do this anyway, and it's impossible to get them to apply SCK stacks to nearby targets. And that is a very, very annoying bug, because it essentially removes an ability as a filler, and if it gets fixed, it will improve our AoE damage quite a bit. So Monk still thrives in AoE and short pulls and big burst damage, because as long as you space out your Storm Earth and Fire procs, and you maybe use up 1 for each pack, or 2 if it's a huge pack, then you use small packs to regenerate it. So Windwalker Monk still has all of the utility and abilities to be a very, very powerful spec in Mythic Plus. Now let's talk about the overall changes to Windwalker and what I think about it, my overall impressions. First of all, our utility. It was nerfed a little bit because we're not able to in-cap as often, and it also, they changed our transfers, so we're not able to do that as often. But overall, I don't think it's a big change, because we still have so many tools that we can use for mobility that it doesn't really become an issue. As far as the GCD change goes, Windwalker Monk was essentially not affected by this at all. Our Touch of Karma and our Storm Earth and Fire are on the GCD. Our Touch of Death is on the GCD, our Touch of Karma is not on the GCD. But since we have a 1 second lock global cooldown, it's not really that big of a deal. Some other classes had seen a much bigger impact. And whenever I was doing dungeons, I didn't really notice the GCD changes as much on the Windwalker Monk. As far as strengths and weaknesses go, strengths, Windwalker Monk is still about the same. It has very strong burst damage and very good in Mythic Plus and AoE bursts that don't really last that long. So we're talking about short packs where you run in with all of your cooldowns, you nuke the pack, and you move on. We still have very, very strong mobility, even after the nerfs, and our rotation is very smooth. So that was one thing that I really enjoyed about Legion Monk, is that everything felt very smooth to play. You were doing something on every single global cooldown, and overall it was just a very nice playstyle to have. The weaknesses of Windwalker Monk is that it's a hybrid class, and this is probably the biggest weakness, because hybrid classes historically come down purely to tuning. So Windwalker Monk, in my opinion, is probably the best DPS hybrid class at the moment, but for single target and raid encounters, it will simply come down to, are our numbers tuned well for single target? Our rotation is smooth, we bring that 5% physical damage from our new aura type buff that was added to Monk, but if the determining factor if monks will be brought to raids at the high end is if the damage is there. And we have all of the tools to shine in Mythic Plus and in AoE, but when it comes to raiding, it will be a purely numbers game. And you might have seen this historically, that Windwalker monks are either very, very good, like they were in Antorus, or they're extremely undertuned and they're just not really used at all, like we saw in some previous raids. So my overall impression, and would I play this class? Absolutely. If my criteria, as you will see later in the video where I actually choose an alt, if my criteria didn't involve playing a class that has at least 2 DPS specs, Monk would be the top runner. If you're someone who also enjoys having a hybrid class, so you want to sometimes heal or tank or DPS, currently Monk is probably the best option for if you want to go that route. As always, what do you guys think about the Windwalker Monk? Are these solid changes? Have you gotten a chance to try it on the BFA beta? What do you think of this spec compared to its state on live, especially in Antorus? Are you going to main this spec in BFA? Leave those in the comment section below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and sub to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.